Hello and welcome everyone to a very special broadcast today. I'm your host, Geophysicist Stefan Burns, reporting on some spectacular developments that are occurring right now in our solar system. We have just had two massive coronal mass ejections launched towards Jupiter, the largest of the planets in our solar system, a planet which has an incredibly powerful magnetic field. There are massive storms all across the planet. Aurora light up the polar regions of Jupiter, and it emits energy out throughout the solar system. It emits auroral emissions. These are like kilometric and decimetric radio emissions outwards. It also emits Jovian flux. And so this spreads out across the solar system, and energy is information. So any energy that Jupiter emits, that is interacting with all the planets, including Earth. And so Jupiter is getting supercharged at this moment in time from these back-to-back huge coronal mass ejection impacts. The first one has just about hit now. That was 9 days ago on March 28th. The second one just launched today. And so I think we're seeing a heightening of all the benefic Jupiterian energies at this moment in time. I felt very inspired when I saw this second solar storm launch. Of course, we knew the first one launched on the 28th. It's been 9 days since that one occurred. But now that there's been a second one, clearly there's something to this. And so I wanted to share some of this information out with everybody because many people aren't aware of this. I say 99.99% are not aware of this. It's a very niche thing, but it impacts all of us. Jupiter plays a major role in the solar system, gravitationally, electromagnetically, and archetypally. And so I'm going to act as a conduit today with a Jovian Connection Meditation at the end of the data presentation. So let's get right into it. Let's check out these coronal mass ejections that were launched towards Jupiter. Here is the first one. Now, this is a coronagraph. We also have the sun there. This is SDO imagery, and then we have our C2 and our C3 coronagraph. This is 32 solar radii across, and so this is looking at the sun directly from Earth's perspective. And Jupiter, at this moment in time on March 28th, was basically exactly square Earth. And this launched exactly from that eastern limb of the sun, directly towards Jupiter. So this was the first direct shot to Jupiter. And let me pull up the second direct shot to Jupiter, which occurred just today. This is breaking news right here. Look at that coronal mass ejection, which launched. It's still kind of ongoing. This data is still just coming in at this moment in time. It goes all the way till the very beginning of April 6th Universal Time. But that's also a huge coronal mass ejection, again, launched towards Jupiter. This one, a little bit off of 90 degrees, more on the far side of the sun. And in fact, that's where Jupiter is right now because it's rotating out of that 90-degree angle more towards the back side of the sun like that. And so this is also aimed at Jupiter. It's going to take a little bit longer to reach Jupiter because you can see that the velocity is slower, but this solar energy does reach Jupiter fairly easily. It reaches Earth the easiest because we're at 1 AU. Of course, Mercury will get hit way faster than the Earth will if it's aimed at Mercury. Same with Venus, but at 1 astronomical unit, we're right there at the very front row seats of this concert. Jupiter is not that far back, whereas Neptune is 30 astronomical units away. Check out the aurora that we've just been seeing recently from the International Space Station. This is from a G1, G2 storm that's been happening right now for about 4 days now. Just kind of low-grade, unsettled geomagnetic activity. But this is a International Space Station orbit in between Antarctica and Australia. And look at that aurora. Jupiter has the same thing. Jupiter is a much bigger planet. It's much more energetic. It is colder, but there are massive lightning storms all across Jupiter. So it's already a very supercharged planet. And then you give it a big dose of solar energy, whereas normally its entire energetic circuit is being driven just by passive solar radiation. You give it two back-to-back solar storms and they're big ones, well, you're very likely going to enhance all the energetics on Jupiter. And we see, for example, the effect of just the sun on even the most distant planet in our solar system. Here we have Neptune, and we see that Neptune's atmosphere changes across the solar cycle based on different amounts of radiation it receives. So here it has these cirrus clouds. It's like the mid to upper atmosphere, and it produces some bright aurora. But then, and this is like during more like higher solar activity, solar maximum, it has this. This is the descending phase. And then we see here at the end of the minimum, these clouds go away. But then during maximum phase, you have aurora again. This is Neptune at 30 astronomical units. Jupiter again is at 5, Earth is at 1. And so we're seeing broad atmospheric changes at Neptune, which receives just a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the solar energy that we do here on Earth or that Jupiter does. We can assume that the energetic changes that the sun imparts upon the planets closer in, like Jupiter, like Earth, like Venus, like Mercury, are very significant. And so we see these changes with Neptune across time. This is data from 2020 there. And so we see that during solar minimums, the atmosphere changes on Neptune. And we also see that Jupiter releases energy. Actually, all the planets with magnetic fields release this sort of auroral emission radiation. So we have auroral radio frequency, non-thermal emissions, and we see Jupiter by far has the strongest flux density for these auroral radio frequency emissions, other than at the kilometric frequency where Saturn is stronger. But you see that Jupiter here is very, very strong in these higher frequencies. This is the x-axis here. We're looking at megahertz, okay? Now keep in mind that our flux density is very low, 10 to the negative 19, 10 to the negative 20, 21, 22, right? This is going down in flux density. But we see that at 10 megahertz and beyond, Jupiter is the only planet that is still emitting these radio frequencies. And that's important because Earth has an ionosphere, and it'll absorb, in general, any wavelengths of radio frequency that are below this. You need a certain high frequency wave to be able to pass through the ionosphere and not get absorbed into that plasma. Jupiter has that. And so that's why sometimes you can just be tuning the radio and you'll get some weird Jupiterian signal. If you're in that frequency band and maybe you're like in the middle of Iowa and there's no stations on in that frequency range, right? You can kind of sometimes hit those Jupiterian frequencies. There's people that monitor these Jupiterian auroral emissions and the other planets as well, but really Jupiter on a day-to-day basis. And so that's one way that Jupiter works with us energetically, the entire solar system, in fact, because it's constantly emitting this energy outwards, these radio frequencies. And the way that's generated is within the magnetosphere. You have particles that are accelerated, and that releases these microwave and even lower frequency radio waves. So Earth, you see, also produces them, right? Because we have aurora here on Earth. Uranus and Neptune do as well. But Jupiter, we're talking about Jupiter here. Jupiter is the one that's being supercharged right now back to back with these two huge coronal mass ejections. Now, there's another way that Jupiter also interacts with us energetically. Check this out. This is Jovian flux. And so what we see, here's our solar system diagram. We see the sun, we see Earth right there, there's Mars, there's Jupiter. Now the other planets are way out here. But what we see is that there are certain ions that get accelerated within the magnetic field of Jupiter, which are it's a very powerful magnetic field, much stronger than Earth's. They get accelerated to very high velocities, and then they get flung out from the magnetic field, and then they propagate out through the entire solar system. We don't really see these sort of ions from the other planets, like Saturnian ions or Uranian or Neptunian ions. We don't really see them. We see Jovian flux though. Like Jupiter is big enough to be able to cause this release of plasma out across the entire solar system. It takes about 13 months to go through its normal wave cycle. So we get an increase in Jovian flux and it goes down, and this is all based upon the orbit of Jupiter and also our orbit here on Earth. We take 1 year to revolve around the sun. Jupiter takes 12 years, and so in 1 year it's moved 1/12, and so that makes it about 13 months or so for this normal Jovian flux cycle. But in general, it's always releasing this Jovian flux. As you see, it just goes up and down in the amount. And so This is plasma that's being shot off from Jupiter all across the solar system that was first accelerated in the magnetic field. And that magnetic field is going to get compressed by these solar storms. The first one's already happening. The second one's going to come in probably about a week or two, hit Jupiter, right? And that causes an energy cascade. It strengthens that global electric circuit and causes this particle accelerator of Jupiter to get amplified. You have more aurora around Jupiter, right? You probably have more lightning strikes and stuff. We see how solar storm impacts impact terrestrial weather here on Earth. We just saw a whole bunch of huge tornadoes sweep through the United States right after some pretty significant space weather impacts, right? I was talking about that. But so the other thing to keep in mind with this Jovian flux is that there's more and more evidence that plasma has consciousness. My personal belief system is that everything is conscious, but you start to look at plasma closely, the fourth state of matter, which is very energetic, it's vibrating, but it also still maintains order and coherence, and it seeks to preserve its structure, and it seems to have an intelligence that's kind of, a little bit beyond our understanding. It's definitely different than ours. So Jupiter is emitting this plasma all across the solar system. And if plasma is conscious, then Jupiter is influencing us consciously as well through these mechanisms. And the question is not really, in my mind, okay, what is the significance of the energy, like how much energy, and right, whether that's significant or not. There's sometimes ways for a small domino to knock over bigger dominoes. Like energy can't be created nor destroyed, according to Einstein, right? So somehow the energy and the information gets preserved and the Earth works with that and delivers that to us. I want to show you specifically the arrangement with Jupiter and talk a little bit about the archetypal energies of Jupiter, because I think this is a really good thing. This is not something to be afraid about. I mean, in general, the things happen just as they happen, but this is a good thing because Jupiter is seen as a big, like the great benefic, right? Here is the 28th of March. Here's the planetary geometry for that first storm. That launched right from there on the sun. Look at Jupiter, 90 degrees from Earth. If I zoom over there, see that arrangement? A little off from 90 degrees. And in fact, that storm launched basically that direction. So Jupiter got hit. And then if we go forward to the 5th of April, it's just about to be the 6th for me. But you see Jupiter also in the same position. And that other storm launched from a little bit further off on the far side. So again, another hit to Jupiter. Jupiter is having this supercharging, not from one storm, but from two storms. And these storms are quite significant. And Jupiter archetypally represents good benefic energy and fortune. And it's looking out for us. Jupiter has always been the good guy. And there are some ways that benefic energy can kind of work malefic depending on the situation. But in general, Jupiter is there for us. And so we're seeing a lot of craziness and chaos on our planet at this moment in time. We're having the double retrograde with Mercury and Venus. I think Mercury just wrapped up its retrograde. But you also have some other conditions planetarily that just, things aren't expressing themselves in the best way. But if we look at this from an active space weather astrological perspective, which I don't think anyone's really doing, right? The fact that the sun sent its own solar consciousness to Jupiter not once but twice in a very significant way is speaking to the fact that there is this interchange of energy between the sun and Jupiter, and then Jupiter is going to work with that, format it, imbue it with its benefic energy, and then send that out all across the solar system. And here on Earth, we are well received to pick that up because we have a magnetic field and we're not that far from Jupiter, as you can see. Whereas the other planets, if I zoom around, they are much, 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 much further away. So that Jovian flux does go all across the solar system. The auroral emissions, right, the radio frequencies, they also go all across the solar system. But Jupiter is going to be working with us very directly as a result of these energy impacts. And this is a very great benefic thing. So I would say now is a good time, just in general, for the next week or two, starting now, but all the way for like the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, perhaps all the way till the end of May. Like, it's a good time to ask for things that you want with pure intentions in your heart. I think there's a great opportunity to manifest things. as a result of this energy that's being sent to Jupiter, and then as a result being sent all across the solar system. And yeah, this is just I'm just using my intuition here. I think it's a really good benefic energy. So with that said, let us do our Jovian Connection Meditation to help call in and connect to some of these energies that are coming in at this moment in time, not only from the sun, but also now Jupiter in a more significant way than before. You know, putting hard math numbers on this is just simply not possible at this moment in time for me, but also really societally. But is there a change in the energy output from Jupiter as a result of these solar storms, these big solar storms hitting Jupiter? Certainly, absolutely. We know that for a fact. So there is some sort of energetic change happening. I believe that we're going to be receiving that. We probably already are, because, you know, a radio frequency wave, that's traveling at the speed of light. So it takes 8 minutes for the sun, light photons from the sun to reach Earth, 8.3 minutes. This is 5 AU. So you do 5 times 3, right? About 30 minutes or so to reach a radio frequency emission from Jupiter to Earth. So it's very quick. It can be very, very fast. So let us do our Jovian Connection Meditation. I recommend you find a comfortable position, and we're going to get right into it. So just find a comfortable position, and yeah, let's do our Jovian Connection Meditation. I just recommend that you just, you can speak directly to these other conscious entities that we have in our solar system, these other super consciousnesses. They'll speak to you. A quick story before we start. I went to Split, Croatia a couple years back, and they have a Temple of Jupiter there, still intact. And so I went to the Temple of Jupiter and I prayed. I went there almost every day and prayed for help writing this ebook, and in general for just manifesting some money, because I was traveling Europe on a shoestring budget, like no money basically. And after praying at the Temple of Jupiter, about an hour or two later, I'm walking around and I find 50 krona on the ground. I scoop it up. That's their local currency. And I just spent 50 krona on some cherries and, I don't know, something else, like a thing of honey or something. It was just enough to basically pay me back. But it was a sign saying, hey, I got you. Because there was so many people about. There was hundreds of people walking by this busy street, and no one noticed the money. I was just like, it's mine. So that's how Jupiter works. He'll speak to you very quickly. So, all right, let's get started. And let's get started with our crown chakra bowl to bring these energies in. Take a deep breath. Now pull in the manifestation to your third eye. What do you envision? What you see is what will be. Create the manifestation for a better earth. energy in your solar plexus. We are all stardust. And now that we've connected to the Jovian energies, it's time to integrate them. Carry them forward, for ourselves, for those close to us, and for everyone here on this planet, all life, all creatures, great and small. From the stones to the bugs, to even the water that we drink. How will we make use of this fortuitous, benefic, Jovian influx of energy? I'm helping to call it in with this live stream. Thank you all for joining me tonight, today, wherever you are, whatever time, for bringing this energy in, this very special energy from a very rare solar system event. So let's capitalize on this, let's use it, because we're not always going to be so lucky. But today, right now, we are, and we can certainly use the energy. So thank you all so much for joining me today. Again, I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Om. We'll do one Om together. Master frequency. Send you all lots of love and light. Please take care of yourselves. I'll see you all very, very soon.